What's up, folks? I'm Mason the Altruist.
I'm Mason the Second.
We are the Masons, and this is Mason's 2 cents.
I'm busy cause I'm nice as shit. But maybe later on I can write your hit. Giving my money won't forever that shit.
What's up, folks? I am Mason the Altruist, and this is Mason's 2 cents. I recently had the pleasure of speaking with a pre-licensed therapist, and let me tell you, if you're on the journey of therapy, or if you're even thinking about it, this is something that may absolutely help you. I am someone who have always considered therapy, especially once I got into my 40s, and recognizing that, we all have slight or major dysfunctions going on through our lives. So, like, if you're interested in this, or if this is something that you thought about, check this video out. It might be something that can help you out, and let me know what you think about it.
All right, all right. Well, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I am so excited to have Mr. Robert Mason here on the first shot. And I can even speak it into being and saying the first episode of Ask a Therapist in Training. This is going to be a series of sessions and communications with community about mental health, answering all kinds of questions, whether it's about mental health, specific mental health issue or specific mental health ideology or thought or concept that is held in our community about mental health, or if people have questions on what it's like to become a mental health therapist. So this is a free open space to have some conversations about achieving optimal well-being. And I am so honored and thrilled, Rob, that you had raised your hand instantly and said, I will go, I will interview you.
Yes, absolutely.
So before we jump into it, just a quick housekeeping. These sessions they're not sessions. These are not clinical sessions. These are informational conversations that we're having about mental health. I am a pre-licensed therapist, which means I'm still in school, finishing up my graduate program in clinical mental health counseling at the Chicago School. I do provide clinical mental health services under the supervision of Mr. Jamal Crone of SoulSeed Counseling, operating in Washington, D.C. He holds licenses in the District of Columbia, Virginia, and Boston, which means that I can offer services to people who reside in those states, in those jurisdictional areas as well. But again, this is not a clinical session, but this is just an informational session. There may be some clinical things that come up, but this is an informational session about mental health. And with that, Rob, I know you have your own platform as well. I'm anxious and excited to hear about it. So you take it away and tell us who you are and what you're about.
What's up, folks? I am Mason the Altruist, and this is Mason's 2 cents. We discuss a myriad of topics, mainly tech and a little bit of music, but I'm definitely looking forward to challenging myself with therapy and help. So I'm definitely looking forward to learning a lot from Sheryl and asking some questions.
I love it. I love it. All right. So where do you want to start? You want to just jump right in?
Should we say how we met?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. You want to tell your story?
So this is actually my mother-in-law. I married her son almost 3 years ago, March 19th, this year, 2025. So this is my lovely mother-in-law. And I love interacting with her. In fact, the whole family, because they're all brilliant. So it's always a challenge, sometimes intimidating, but it's all good.
Nothing to be intimidated. We're all human.
Absolutely.
We just have our
Absolutely.
different
Yes.
areas of strength that makes us strong
Yes.
as a whole, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so Rob is my son in love and of my precious child who actually bought me this cup. I don't know if this is
Okay.
on reverse. It says my
No,
favorite
it's
child.
straight.
It's straight. Okay. So
Yes.
you can see what it says. My son, Rob's husband, is actually one of six. So just imagine how that went over. But I love them. I love my cup. And so that makes this moment that much more special for me for so many different reasons. But here we go. This is your interview. And
Okay.
so I'm gonna give you the space and we'll have this conversation.
All right. What is your title?
Pre-licensed therapist. What
What
does
does
that mean?
what does that mean?
Exactly. Thank you, thank you, thank you for asking that question. Um, Pre-licensed therapist means that I am a trained clinical mental health therapist, mental health counselor. I have not completed all of the state jurisdictional requirements to be a licensed therapist. So every state has their requirements, which are often consist of educational requirements. You have to have a certain number of educational credits. You have to have some practical experience, meaning you also have to practice the art and science of providing mental health care for a certain number of hours. Generally, it's about 2,000 hours, offering direct services as well as indirect services to the community before you are eligible for license. And licensure status and title changes across jurisdictions. So I'm in the DMV. Here in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, DC and Maryland call their clinical counselors licensed clinical professional counselors. I think Virginia has a similar but different, maybe it's a professional counselor, an LPC. And then we have kind of an interim step, which is a graduate counselor. So that's once you've completed all your academic hours, you've completed a significant portion of your practical, we call it practicum or practical hours when you're actually doing clinical care. You satisfied a significant number of those hours, which is like that 2,000 hours that I'm talking about, and you've passed an exam. So when I'm operating as a pre-licensed therapist, I haven't completed all of my hours and I have
Okay.
not yet taken my exam, but I operate under the supervision of a fully licensed counselor, and I've satisfied the bulk of my training, my practical training to be able to offer sound clinical help to the community.
So you'll have your own patients at this point right now.
I
You have
do.
patients. Okay.
I currently have, and we don't call them patients.
Okay.
And the distinction that we make is mental health counseling is based in science. It's an evidence-based practice, right? So it is a scientific treatment, but it differentiates itself from a medical treatment, which is solely focused on resolving medical symptoms.
Mhm.
Mental health circumstances, conditions, issues that cause disruption in people's lives, like be it depression or anxiety, fears, phobias of certain things, those aren't medical conditions. Those are psycho-emotional conditions. And so we want to make sure that we differentiate the the services that we offer by not referring to people as patients. I'm not focused on your symptoms. I'm focused on your overall health and well-being. So you are my client or someone coming in seeking our services. We refer to them as clients and not as patients.
What happens when you first encounter a client? How do they find you? Or how
Yeah.
do you find them?
Yeah, yeah. And actually it's like they find us. Oftentimes people who have a need, an emotional need, a psycho-emotional, they're having a hard time adjusting to what's going on in their world. They've lost a loved one and they're struggling to deal with the grief and redefining and redesigning their lives. They've lost a job, they graduated from college and they're having a hard time finding their footing. They are having some evolutions in their self-identity and they're getting comfortable with what that means, who they are, how to share their self-awareness with their other loved ones, and they need some help or guidance. Oftentimes people will go to friends, hey, do you know anybody that I can talk to? People will go to online platforms like Psychology Today offers an online platform of providers, service providers. They may go to their insurance company and look for a mental health practitioner. There are also online tech companies that
Hmm.
match people with mental health practitioners. So there are a number of ways that people encounter, I guess to the extent where I might meet people is just being out and about in my world and having conversations. And someone might say, "What do you do?" And I'll say, "Oh, I'm a pre-licensed therapist." "Ooh, I need you. I need to talk to you."
Hmm.
Make an
Exactly. That's
appointment.
the first thing I thought. It's like, I might need this service.
Make an appointment. But
Hmm.
it's, in saying that, we like all professions that serve the community are governed by rules and statutes, right?
Yes.
Ethics. One of the ethics in the mental health care is to maintain a space of objectivity. So what's really powerful and impactful with mental health care is all of those things that I mentioned that people may be seeking someone to speak to, as well as the things that they don't, that I didn't mention that are included. They have people in their world that they potentially could talk to, but for a variety of reasons, they're not comfortable sharing those aspects of themselves and lives with people that they interact with on a social basis. From a
Hmm.
professional standpoint, our code of ethics requires us to maintain strict boundaries in our professional relationships. So we are often encouraged not to counsel people who are close to us, family members, friends, and loved ones, because it dilutes the degree of objectivity that we can
Absolutely, I
offer
agree.
those people because we're connected. And then confidentiality is a huge part of people being comfortable and sharing some of their most intimate details. And when you
Hmm.
they mama or they
Exactly.
sister,
Hmm. Hmm.
or
I
the
wouldn't want to be
best friend.
judged.
Exactly,
I don't
exactly,
want
exactly,
that.
exactly, exactly, exactly. So yeah.
So does it ever come from a holistic approach, or is this kind of considered holistic in a certain way?
That's a beautiful, beautiful, powerful question. I want to dig into what brings you to asking that question after I answer it. It should be holistic, right? The
Hmm.
word psychology itself is rooted in, comes from a root word that means soul. So I'm not certain, I'm assuming that I understand what you're referring to when you speak of a holistic practice. I'll say
Yes.
out loud, correct me if I miss something. Holistic to me is all encompassing, right?
Hmm.
We can put a religious definition of the aspects that are spiritual or religious in that holistic concept, but just at its root cause, conceptually, holistic is all encompassing.
It's misconstrued. You know
It
what I
is,
mean? I understand
yeah,
exactly what you're saying.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. And so, the approaches to mental health care or therapy that seek to dissect the way a person thinks, feels, behaves, and differentiate them from all aspects of their being, I believe are doing a disservice, because the issues of disruption often occur when the way we think, process, behave, internalize manifest in the fullness of our interactions and being, right? It's easy to fix when you're standing alone or to feel like you've resolved an issue of hurt when you're in the room by yourself. But then when you come out in the world, there are all these other worldly factors that have the potential to trigger, agitate and
Hmm.
provoke some of those behaviors that you thought to resolve. So
Hmm.
I do not believe, and in my practice, I will never um, disassociate or dissect a person's whole being from the work that we do in achieving wellness and
I get
well-being.
that. I understand that. What do you say about the person who feels like the term holistic is easier to digest? I can let me go maybe go get fixed the easy way. So a person has a problem, right?
Mhm.
And of course, we know that with certain drugs or with certain practices, maybe they're intrusive, but maybe there's also something that's not as scary as this whole foreign side. Maybe there's something that requires religion or spirituality, but that's effective. Like whether these things exist or not, I think for some of us, we hear holistic and it's like, I can digest that versus this is a therapist or a
Yeah.
doctor.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. And the core of that question is exactly why I wanted to do this and have this
Hmm.
conversation with our community.
Hmm.
Because, the fact of the matter is, therapy and medicine has been defined in all communities, and especially in communities of color, as being colonized. It's
Hmm.
it's very European. The approaches are very European and very foreign to non-European ways of being and seeing things. And for that reason, we see a lot of people not accessing the mental health care that they need and looking to other mechanisms that have the potential in concert and in harmony to be helpful, but are
Yes.
used without knowledge and used in excess and used inappropriately and become problematic. So, language is are merely spoken symbols of communication. So if I meet someone and they say, I don't want to call this therapy, I don't want to call this clinical, I want to call this a holistic approach to wellness. I am your shaman. I am your healer. And I shouldn't say I am your shaman because that has its own degree of training that I have not undergone. But in my practice, I incorporate what many would consider holistic practices. I incorporate Reiki, which is an energy healing
I
practice.
literally was just about to turn this page over and ask you what's the lowercase r word? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It seems holistic as I use that word again.
It is. It is. It's an energy work that recognizes that we are mind, body, and spirit, right? And those big categories
Hmm.
encompass things that are seen and things that are not seen. So there is a whole energy aspect to our being, organic systems, human beings, animals, trees, the air, they all have an energy that is a part of them that you can't see, but you can feel. Somebody walks by you and you're like, oh, or somebody walks by you and you're like, mm-mm.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
there's an energetic vibe and exchange that you are encountering that is eliciting an equally energetic, non-physical response, right? And
Yes.
oftentimes those energy, the flow of that energy can become blocked. You've heard, I believe you've probably heard of chakras,
Yes.
clearing the chakras, right? Because that is the tunnel and the funnel through which energy moves throughout our being. Well, it moves through our being and it moves out around us, the energy level. And sometimes the things that we experience in our lives cause stuff to get blocked up within us. It manifests then in our bodies. We get physical ailments, headaches, backaches, leg aches, nerve issues, things of that nature. Sometimes emotional responses, depression, fatigue, anxiety, um, paranoia. Those things can also be impacted by energy. And so the Reiki work that I do it is a holistic practice that helps just to clear up. It accesses the universal energy that exists in, through, and around us all.
Hmm.
And I operate as a facilitator of that energy, a connection with the universal energy, connecting with the individual sitting in front of me or standing or beyond me, and we form a connection. And in that connection, we begin to work, and it is a bit mystical in the sense that we don't understand all of the ways that it works, but we have science that evidences the fact that it does work. And so you have a healing, a resolution, a calming, a relieving, a release, a rebalancing through
This is
this
in person.
energetic. It can be in person and it can also be virtual. And
Okay.
because it's
Oh,
energy. So when
that's
you
right.
speak to holistic, this is that this is a perfect example of the dynamic mechanisms of healing that are available to us when we approach these things in a holistic way versus a medical way that says, I got to cut this out or give this a pill or, do all these
Like a pill.
physical,
Hmm.
materialistic things to facilitate a healing. It's the soul, it's the
Right.
spirit, it's the essence of the being that longs to be connected and healed. Long answer, sorry.
Amazing. But does someone ask for, is it called Reiki?
It's pronounced Reiki.
Reiki?
Reiki.
Do you recommend it or they have to request it?
I would recommend it. I would recommend it. People, if people
You
know
would
about it,
recommend
they
it.
can ask for it, you know. Have you considered an energetic or however it comes up? I don't know. I think I tend to use too many words when I'm explaining things. So I just kind of I try to flow in the conversation of where it's going and speak to whatever the need is and offer whatever modalities I have available to me to facilitate the healing that people need.
Do you find yourself busier nowadays, just with, I guess, current times and current events? Do you find yourself with more pressure just to get the clients sort of the help that they're requesting or that they need, that you see that they need?
So I wouldn't say busier now because I don't really have a before being a new therapist. I definitely feel a weight of responsibility and my own pressures and my own anxiety because I see that our current climate of being socio-political climate, you know, just stuff that's going on in people's lives and people's worlds, people are hurting and people need a
Yes.
lot, you know. And so, yeah,
Yes.
I definitely feel that weight and want to help and be impactful and make a difference. And at the same time, it's that push and pull, you know. I don't want to cause harm, right? It's like it's the tenderness of the responsibility that this is someone's life, this is someone's being, this is someone's heart, this is someone's mind that you are impacting. Don't mess up, kind of kind of feeling. But
Exactly.
yeah.
Do you find yourself wrestling with your own anxiety or maybe taking on so much that you're less able to be effective?
I definitely find myself wrestling with my own anxiety. I definitely find myself taking on stuff that's not mine. Um, I strive to not allow it to impact me and my effectiveness by reaching back to my supervisors. Speaking to my supervisors, I get therapy. I'm in therapy myself, speaking to my own therapist, sharing, you know, my own spiritual practices of release, and trying to maintain the sense and the awareness that I operate as a healer, but I'm not the source of healing. So the things that I might pick up and carry, I I work to release them to the one who can heal, you know, who is the source of healing, and ask for wisdom and guidance and discernment and take care and do my own self-care, take care of myself. You know, when I feel heavy, I've got to have my own practices of release. Sometimes I need to go in my corner, shut the door, turn out the lights, close the
Absolutely.
windows, you know, turn off the phone and put the pillow over my head and just process out through whatever is going on right there. Yeah.
I agree with that. I agree with that. So, on your journey, like, what's the introductory period like? What's the duration of someone who wants to be licensed? Is it a matter of getting a graduate degree, or is it a matter of, like, for instance, can you fast track anything? Is it a matter of let me take on more of a repertoire so that I can hurry up and get out here on these streets?
There are many different paths to get here, but I think that the state requirements are such. The state is tasked, the boards that govern the licensing are tasked to protect the public. And so, you know, there are just some core classes that you got to take. You need to understand human development. You need to understand ethics. You need to understand psychological theories that are evidence based and science proven and sustained through the years. You can't just get out here in the streets and because you want to help people think that you can effectively help people, right? I think we can call on many different trends where people wanting to help others inadvertently can cause some harm because they just don't know what they don't know. So your
With
process is
Yeah,
it
exactly.
Yeah, and in each state's requirements are different, right? In the majority of the states, you have to at least have a master's degree from a certain credential, a KCREP program. KCREP is a credentialing overseeing body that creates the standards of education that establish the base knowledge that someone wanting to operate in this field must have. And then they have a test that proves that you have that standard base knowledge. And then you have to have a certain number of practice hours under supervision where you're developing your practice. It's like anything else that requires a degree of expertise or specialization. You can get the intellectual knowledge and you can think about it, but it's not until you put it into a practical application where you really become aware of what you know, what you don't know, where you can prove out what's effective in the work that you're doing, versus the way a book might present it. So you have schools that give degrees, master's degrees, doctorate degrees in clinical counseling, a doctorate of psychology, of clinical psychology, where you're practicing. But it's really that KCREP standard that creates some universality of the knowledge that you have to have about human beings, human psyche, and the practice of helping people be well and live well in their authentic self. Again, the licensing designations of each jurisdiction, whether or not you'll see different letters behind people's names. You might see LGPC, that might be a licensed graduate professional counselor, someone who's still operating under the guidance, or an LPC is a licensed professional counselor. Someone who is no longer under supervision, they have accumulated the necessary number of skills and hours. You can find those people in people's insurance providers. And frankly, just a simple Google search, therapist near me, will bring
Yeah,
up a host of resources,
absolutely.
where you might be able to find someone.
So I know it's probably improper for me to ask personal questions,
No?
um, but I do have a scenario. I have this fictitious character named Malik, and I just wanted to know if you could help him out a little bit.
Well, let's say what is going on with the leak.
Let's see what's going on with Malik. Okay, so at 22, Malik Carter felt like he was unraveling. Growing up in the religious household in Baltimore, his coming out at 18 had turned home into a place of quiet disapproval. College gave him a taste of freedom, but financial stress failed relationships, and deep sense of loneliness weighed on him. Losing his job was his final blow. His withdrawal from friends, he skipped classes and he spent nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if things would get better. A friend pushed him towards therapy, and although hesitant, he found himself sitting in a waiting room to speak with Sheryl. Heart pounding. His first question was, how can I begin healing from the rejection that I faced from my family?
Hearing that question, the first thing I want to do is I want to let Malik know that I hear him. I hear his heart and I hear his pain, and I want to acknowledge that. And I'm likely to say, wow, I can only imagine what that must feel like for you. And I'm sorry that you have experienced such a hurtful response or reaction to you coming into a place of knowing and accepting who you are. Because at the core of all of our pains and sorrows, self-identity, coming out,
Hmm.
being rejected, going against the norms of your tribe and your community, that is so courageous. And I want to commend Malik for taking that step to be true to himself, their self, however you identify, despite the pressures to conform to someone else's idea of who you're supposed to be.
Absolutely.
And I think
Absolutely.
that's where your healing starts.
Yeah,
I think, Malik, that, for Malik, people who have similar experiences to Malik, being affirmed, um, that you have a right to be you, regardless of anyone else's opinions, value systems, teachings, or whatever. You are an autonomous individual, worthy, deserving, and entitled to love and acceptance. And in this space that we occupy, that is what I offer you unconditionally and holistically.
I agree. And I definitely think he's brave because you noticed a short time ago, folks weren't feeling comfortable until 40, 45. And then it's just so much of
Yeah,
your, I don't say your life is gone, but
but it is.
if a,
It
if the
is.
younger folks are just so courageous to say, you know what, it feels like the whole world rejects me, but I'm still gonna
Yes.
let you know who I am, and I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie about it. That's a certain type of courage that I don't think I even know.
It is. It is. I mean, so many different labels that you can put on that, but the courage to stand flat foot, 10 toes down in who you know yourself to be and to not cave because the pressure is immense, whether it's, religious traditions, whether it's the fear of rejection from the only love and support. Because when you talk about young people, at 18, Malik coming to this place, we know from a developmental perspective, at 18, he's in that stage of transition where he's just beginning to detach from that
Hmm.
familiar, that family core
Yeah,
to explore his own autonomy. But all he's known for 18 years is dependency on this core family that's rejecting. So he has no other lived experience to assure him that if he didn't have that core family, that somebody else would be out there to give him the connection that all living beings need. But yet he does it anyway. He does it anyway. He
anyway,
tr-
yep,
he trusts in the thing that he cannot see, in the thing that he has never experienced, that somehow this is still the right thing to do. And it is. And
absolutely,
it is.
absolutely. I deal with anxiety a lot. Malik is juggling a lot, even multiple jobs, right? And he's like, I'm making it, but my biggest fear is that I don't want to go back to Baltimore, don't want to go back to my neighborhood and A, say I need help, or B, say that I failed, especially a younger person, right? How do you help folks with anxiety, like the kind of anxiety that makes you want to like pass out?
Yeah. Yeah. Learning to understand where it's coming from. You know, there is a part in us who deal with anxiety. There is a part of ourselves that tells us all the things that can go wrong. It activates our nervous system, to kind of deter us from doing that thing that it is afraid is going to cause us harm, right? And recognizing that part is doing a job out of a mission to protect us, and then having some conversations with that part, like not being afraid of it. So, okay, let's talk about this. This is part of reconciling the whole being into one, and
Hmm.
harmonizing this internal war that takes place within us, of this part that's saying, I really want to try it, and this part that's saying, no, dude, remember what happened the last time we did something like that? We were almost annihilated. You
Okay.
can't risk that. And oftentimes we have not developed the tolerance to sit in the tension of that conversation and come to a point of understanding, reckoning, and reconciliation of what have been the previous experiences, or what is the feared experience that this part is trying to protect us from, assessing the reality of that possibility. Is that real? You know, if some people, and this is an oversimplification and an over exaggeration that I'm offering to make the point, but if our anxiety is telling us, don't walk out that door today,
Hmm.
something bad is going to happen if you walk out that door today. Well, we can look around the corner. If we got a ring camera, we could look at the ring. Is something, challenge that thought. Is something really, if let me just open the door and step my foot on, take that first step. Did something bad happen? No, you know. So that's part of the process of dealing
Hmm.
with those anxious feelings, anxious thoughts, and fears, is really assessing them, coming to understand them, not rejecting the anxiety. Those feelings that we have internally, we are designed with all of these mechanisms inside of us, our nervous systems, our instincts, our intuitions, to make us survive. And sometimes with the experiences that we've had, the painful experiences that we've had, our nervous system gets stuck in an always on state where everything is perceived as a threat because we've experienced threatening environments for so long.
Yeah,
And it requires a resetting of the nervous system. It requires the establishment of safe spaces and a comfort level in knowing that safe spaces exist to
absolutely.
reprogram the nervous system to come
Absolutely.
down.
Absolutely. I agree
And
with
that's
that.
the journey that you explore when you're working with someone to deal with anxiety. There's a tool that we use in therapy and it's called the feelings wheel. In this tool, if somebody were to search for a feelings fear, it has like the core feelings that people experience: happy, sad, disgust, anger, surprise, or fear. But out of those qualities, there are levels of other feelings that exist. So you see her in fear. Underneath the fear, there's humiliation,
Mhm.
there's rejection, there's submissive, insecure, anxious. And then when you go even further, there are even more layers of associated feelings with that core element of fear, right? And oftentimes we'll talk about, oh, I feel anxious, but underneath anxious, there are feelings of being worried, being overwhelmed, being frightened, being terrified, right? And so it's exploring all of those layers that are
Mhm.
creating that inner sense and reckoning with it
Because we're
and
more
being,
complicated than we think we are.
yes,
That's something I never thought about. How many different ways can you feel?
yes, yes. And where is that feeling? Where is it coming from, right? And we in society and ideas about mental health and wellness have stigmatized this thing so intently where if you feel fear, but you can't think of any justified reason to be fearful, now you're crazy. Now you're paranoid. Well, sometimes you are. Sometimes there are those elements in it, but other times there is a past lived experience that has defined fear by these feelings as a protective mechanism because you were hurt by something in the past. And we never resolved, identified, or circled back around, come back to the Sankofa, come back to that thing in the past that hurt you and recover it and deal with it. So it keeps pecking up until you do.
That's kind of tough because I don't, for instance, if Malik got through his anxiety, right? But my man's a little angry. He's a little older, he's a little angry. And he knows based on his journey with, with Sheryl that he's on the road to healing. But there's one thing he's not willing to do. Not to say that he's still being rejected, but he's not willing to even call
Go back.
folks up to say, hey, let's talk about this. Can he still heal? I'm still angry.
Yeah, because the healing and the going back isn't external. It's not going back to the one who caused you harm and demanding or expecting them to give you what you need now that they weren't capable of giving you then.
Oh, 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 oh. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. That was a bit much. Oh man. Wow. That was simply said. You said it very simple. That was to the point, and it makes perfect sense. And that's insanity.
I don't even prioritize defining that action. I'm more focused on Malik's healing, wellness, empowerment, and autonomy.
Mhm.
You don't need anyone else to do for you.
See?
Let's go back to 18-year-old you. What would you have liked? What did that 18-year-old need in that moment when you said what you said? That's what he needed. Can you give it to him, Malik? Can you give 18-year-old Malik what he needs in this moment?
Yep.
And it is that process of identifying our wounded parts, understanding, hearing, making space for our wounded parts to express their pain, their hurt, and demand what they needed, and us to give it to ourselves through the empowerment and the embodiment of what we have, our lived experience. Wrap our arms around 18-year-old Malik. I love you unconditionally. If that's what he needed to hear, all right, I don't understand this choice that you're making. Everything that I've been taught about it tells me that this is wrong, but I'm standing in front of you and you are mine and I love you. And I now have to challenge my thoughts and my beliefs because I have an embodiment of the thing that I love before me, articulating something that I was taught not to accept, but I refuse to reject you. And I gotta figure this out. We gotta figure this out. Teach me, but I will not stop loving you. If we can say that to ourselves, if Malik can say that to himself, then he can continue and reinforce the healing without any external dependency.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't control what other people do. We can't control other people's growth, openness to growing beyond the ways they've always been. That's their journey, that's their path. But for us, for me and Malik, we're in this space, you you give you what you need, and
Right.
not in an unhealthy way where you disconnect and you're like, bump them, I don't need them, I ain't never gonna need nobody, gonna
I'm
do it all
good.
by myself. That's not healthy, but that's what a lot of us will do to
Right.
cope and to protect from the pain. But once I heal and I know that I can be my champion, I'm no longer so fragilely depending on someone else to champion me for me.
Right.
And I'm more able and willing to take risks, to love again, to find people who will accept me as I am, who will
Mm-hmm.
embrace and lift me up.
Instead of risking those same people hurting you again.
That's right.
Absolutely. Woo! It had me a session today. I know it wasn't for me. Oh my gosh. So this was a very, very good conversation. Um, how can Malik, 18, 22-year-old Malik get in contact with you? Like, does he go to your website? Does he send you a smoke signal? He
Yes,
raises his
yes,
hand.
yes, yes. 18-year-old Malik can find us. He can find me, Sheryl Daniel, on Psychology Today, looking in the DC area. He can also go to our website, Crone Esquivel Group, LLC.com. We are a practice, and interestingly enough, beautiful that you raised the case study of Malik, but Crone Esquivel Group, my supervisor, Jamal Crone, is a practice designed to help people going through the exact issues that you talked about, Malik, growing through. You know, people dealing with gender identity and sexual identity and wherever they are, relational challenges when you live your life in a way that's outside of the norm and all of the dynamics that go along with it. I redefine norm. I always say norm in air quotes. I've never bought into that concept of norm because it's based on a white male European pattern that never fit me nor mine.
Absolutely. Hmm.
So I'm never tried to hold myself up to a standard that was never meant to include my way of living and my way of being. And our practice helps people through those difficult moments and difficult times.
It's powerful to know that. Lots of us do not realize that, just because it feels natural and you were raised that way, you're kind of being played in a major way, and you have to break that cycle and you have to, as an individual, determine what's beautiful, what's accepting. And if it doesn't affect you, then you have to learn how to think on those rounds. It doesn't affect me. I don't need to point my finger, judge. I don't need to cause someone mental anguish because I don't think a lot of
Yes.
folks realize that you just affected that person really bad.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot
Absolutely.
of us, a lot of us have our own healing work to do because we've been harm causers unintentionally,
Yes,
you
absolutely. I
know?
agree.
But when you know better, you do better, and you own your ish,
You
right?
do.
You go
You
back
do.
and you say, I'm sorry. You
Yep.
know what? I got that one wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
got it wrong. I was
Yep. And you don't beat
wrong.
yourself up about it either. Yep.
You own it and you live in a different way to not cause harm, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Good talk.
Good stuff. Cheers to owning it. Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you, Cheryl. I hope we have more conversations in the future.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for allowing me to have this conversation and get some earfuls of insight that I'm sure I could use.
Thank you. Thank you for honoring me and joining this space and having this conversation and trusting me with the questions. I appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cheryl. Love you.
All right. Love you too.
Bye bye.
Bye.